Yastena yajito jita.
Jayad yadarte swan pranam.
Jayad yadarte swan pranam.
Yadva pitaram guru.
Anyadva pitaram guru.
Tashyam sattvam striyam jayat.
Tasyam sarvam striyam jayat.
Yasena yajito jitaha.
Yastena yajito jitaha.
जहयाद यद अर्थे स्वन प्राणन
Jayad yadarte swan pranam.
अन्यद वा पितरं गुरुं
Anyadva pitaram gurum.
तस्यं स्वत्वं स्त्रियं जयत्
Tasyam sarvam striyam jayat.
यस्तेना ह्य अजितो जितः
Yastena yajito jitaha.
Ladies.
Jayad yadarte swan pranam. Anyadva pitaram gurum. Tasyam sarvam striyam jayat. Yastena yajito jitaha. Jayad yadarte swan pranam. Anyadva pitaram gurum. Tasyam sarvam striyam jayat. Yastena yajito jitaha.
One more.
Jayad yadarte swan pranam. Anyadva pitaram gurum. Tasyam sarvam striyam jayat. Yastena yajito jitaha.
Jayat.
Jayat.
One may give up.
One may give up.
Yat arte.
Yadarte.
For whom?
Prabhu.
Swan.
Swan.
One's own.
One's own.
Pranan.
Pranam.
Life.
Life.
Anyat.
Anyat.
One may kill.
One may kill.
Va.
Va.
Or. Pitaram.
Pitaram.
The father.
The father.
Gurum.
Guru.
The teacher or spiritual master. Tasyam.
Tasyam.
Unto her.
Unto her.
Svatvam.
Sattvam.
Ownership.
Ownership.
Striyam.
Striyam.
Unto the wife.
Unto the wife.
Jayat.
Jayat.
One must give up.
One must give up.
Ya.
Ya.
One who.
One who.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Tena.
Tena.
By him.
By him.
He.
He.
Indeed.
Indeed.
Ajitaha.
Ajitaha.
Cannot be conquered.
Cannot be conquered.
Jitaha.
Jitaha.
Conquered.
Conquered.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. One so seriously considers one's wife to be his own that he sometimes kills himself for her, or he kills others, including even his parents or his spiritual master or teacher. Therefore, if one can give up his attachment to such a wife, he conquers the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is never conquered by anyone. Please repeat. One so seriously considers one's wife
One so seriously considers his wife
to be his own
to be his own
that he sometimes kills himself
that he sometimes kills himself
for her,
for her,
or he kills others,
or he kills others,
including even his parents,
including even his parents,
or his spiritual master or teacher.
or his spiritual master or teacher.
Therefore, if one can give up his attachment to such a wife,
Therefore, if one can give up his attachment to such a wife,
he conquers the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
he conquers the Supreme Personality of
who is
Godhead,
never conquered by anyone.
who is never conquered by anyone.
Purport. Every husband is too much attached to his wife. Therefore, to give up one's connection with his wife is extremely difficult. But if one can somehow or another give it up for the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then the Lord himself, although not able to be conquered by anyone, comes very much under the control of the devotees, of the devotee. And if the Lord is pleased with the devotee, what is there that is unobtainable? Why should one not give up his affection for his wife and children to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Where is the loss of anything material? Household life means attachment for one's wife, whereas sannyas means detachment from one's wife and attachment to Krishna. One so seriously considers one's wife to be his own that he sometimes kills himself for her or kills others, including his parents or his spiritual master or teacher. Therefore, if one can give up his attachment to such a wife, he conquers the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is never conquered by anyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Okay, I'm not sure how long I'm going to be able to talk this morning. I got the shakes a little bad. But, this is the denouement of the explanation of ideal family life, that you give it up. That's ideal. Yeah, the family life that we experience in the material world, of course, is temporary anyway, and whether you voluntarily give it up or not, you're going to give it up by the force of time. So this is pragmatic. Sometimes a materialist will read a verse like this and think that the Vedic civilization is against families. We hear that accusation sometimes against women, against families, etc. But actually, the Vedic civilization is for truth. And rather than living one's life in illusion, thinking that this world is real, that the bonds that we form with other living beings are real, are very important to us, even more important than one's own life, practically speaking. That kind of illusion has to be dealt with. Vedic civilization means how to make human life successful. And that means coming to the realization that we're not these bodies, at least that much. If we can understand we're not the body, then all the bonds that we form in connection with this body, they're not as tightly bound up. They don't bind us as tightly. If you have knowledge, then even though you may go through the external requirements of material life, but within you should be thinking always that I'm not this body, I'm a spirit soul, I'm a part and parcel of the Supreme Spirit Soul, Krishna, and that's my real relationship. Then the relationships that we have with others take on a far different view. Yeah, in ordinary material life, relationship with a man or a woman is everything. Yeah, I have an old friend of mine. He was a childhood school friend, actually, one of the people that I left England with and went to Australia. I became a devotee, he didn't. He lives back in our hometown. I go and see him whenever I'm in England, just to give him some connection. And he was married for 38 years. Then suddenly his wife got cancer, and within 2 months she was gone, finished. So it was a big shock. He'd been living in this nice bubble of household life for 38 years, and now, pop, it was gone. Time had overtaken them and their relationship. She was gone, he was still here. And he became so depressed, he became suicidal. He didn't know what to do, he couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. He was so distressed. Then finally, after a few months, he met an old girlfriend that he hadn't seen for so many years. And they hit it off, and now, they're living together and he's happy again. So what kind of happiness? He doesn't realize that all the pain and suffering that he had to go through from the breaking of the first relationship will again come with the second relationship, and so on and so on. But because he has no information about any alternative, he must form another bond with some other living being. Nobody can live in isolation. It's not possible. There's an example that I often use about a priest, a Christian priest. He was captured in some third world country. There was a coup, so they put him in prison. They put him in a tiny prison cell, 8 feet by 6 feet. And that became his home for 8 years. And they left him there in complete isolation, except of course they were feeding him. But apart from that, he was in solitary confinement. After 8 years, there was a change in government, and then they released him. So when he came out, he was still sane. And they were surprised. After 8 years solitary confinement, how is it that you're still sane? Everybody else, after 1 or 2 years, they all gone mad. Yeah, due to deprivation of relationship, no connection with other living, no meaningful connection with any other living being. So they couldn't figure out, how is it this priest is still normal, he's happy. So he explained that my relationship with God is my best friend. So I've entrusted my whole life to him and his work. So I accept immediately whatever situation that I'm in as being the mercy of the Supreme Lord. He's my best friend. It's always for my benefit. So in that way, when I was put into this cell, I felt, all right, this is the space that God has given me now to live in. So I immediately made my adjustments, and I was quite happy. So this is God consciousness, because he may not have what we would call, real God consciousness, but even a glimmer of it gives you some relief. It's a known fact that in the United States they have several thousand prisoners in the prisons, all in solitary confinement, and some of them have been in that condition for 15 to 20 years. All of them have severe psychological problems. So we can't live without relationship. That's not possible. As living beings, we're thinking, feeling, and willing. And we have to do that with others, not just on our own. It's very difficult to be on your own for very long. I just read a report about, there's one room in America where it's so encased in steel and concrete and everything else that room, there's nothing that can penetrate it. Yeah, there's no sound, there's no light, there's no nothing. And they put people in that room as an experiment to see how long they last in total sensory deprivation. And most of them don't last more than about 10 to 12 minutes. We're not talking about hours or days even. 10 to 12 minutes, and it's so dense, so isolated, that they actually start cracking up. They start hallucinating and all kinds of other things. So the living condition means exchange of consciousness. It means engagement of consciousness with another living being, not with dead things, but with live things. Yeah, if we, take as another example, if somebody buys this is a guy thing, if somebody buys a Lamborghini, let's say, so he's very happy with his motor car, and then you tell him, all right, you can have this Lamborghini, but you have to keep it in the garage, and only you can be with it, nobody else at any other time. You go and enjoy your car. So you put him in the room with the car, how long is he going to last? A few minutes, admiring the tires or the hubs or the engine or the steering wheel or the latest gadgets and what have you. But after a little while, what is he going to do with it? He can't. There's no reciprocation from a dead object. He's putting his consciousness into the object, but he's not getting anything in return. Yeah, and unless he can actually take it out and invite his friends, now you come and drive with me, let's enjoy. Then that's enjoyment when he's with another living being, otherwise not. So the real important thing is relationship. Yeah, the relationships that we have with other living beings. But if we mistake the identity of those living beings to be these dead bodies, then we're going to be frustrated. We're not going to get the happiness that we seek, the exchange that we seek, because it will end at a certain point in time. That's inevitable. That's the whole material world is under the force of time. So nobody can conquer time, because that's the impersonal energy of the Supreme. It's the supreme regulating factor in the material world. And all living beings have been moved by the force of time. And by that force of time, we come into contact with a certain set of living beings. And then after with the same force of time, we lose that contact again. Therefore, Prabhupada sometimes used that example of the bits of straw that are floating in the ocean. So the movement of the waves sometimes throw the bits of straw together. And then again, the same movement of waves separates them and they never come in contact again. Or simply, if we're traveling on a train, we may strike up a conversation with somebody on the train. We get very friendly, we talk this way and that way. The train comes to its destination, they go off in their way, you go off in your way. You never see them again. So what kind of relationship? What we really require is a permanent relationship, which we can always have that constant engagement of the senses, thinking, feeling and willing, our consciousness. It has to be constantly stimulated. Yeah, we don't like limitation. We don't like restriction. So in the material world, everything is limited and everything is restricted. And no matter what we do to try to enjoy, and that means through relationships, it's not going to be successful. So the whole Varnashram system is based on this understanding that this material life is temporary, this human form of life is temporary, but it has a special purpose. That from this platform we can come to a platform of permanence. Yeah? We're living in an impermanent place, but with this human form we can realize the permanence of our real identity as spirit soul, and the identity of others as spirit soul. And then we can connect together, work together, bond together, but for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, who it is that we have our real relationship with. Actually, we don't have any relationship with anyone except Krishna. Krishna is everything. Krishna is everywhere. He's in the heart of every living being. When we attempt to have a relationship with another living being, that living being is dependent on their relationship to Krishna. Our life is dependent on our relationship to Krishna, and therefore the central point is doing everything together, individually or collectively, for the pleasure of Krishna. That relationship is real. It's not illusory. It's not an imagination. It's not a fairy tale, but it's actually the real truth. So we don't want to live in this illusion of thinking that this material world is all there is. That's a very miserable condition of life. It's not very optimistic. But people become so crazy by this ignorance of identifying with the body, they're prepared to do anything and everything to gratify it. Yeah. Just like a person when he knows that his time's running out. Nowadays they call a bucket list. Yeah, you know what a bucket list is. When somebody tells you now you're going to die. You have 6 months left. All right, what are all the things that I want to do before I die? So they write their bucket list. Yeah, I'll go and climb Mount Everest. You know, I read one the other day, some young girl, what a bucket list was, to kiss somebody in the rain. That's a dying wish. So, what is the use of such ideas? Where is the benefit? You come into this human form, it's so valuable, it's got so much potential, but because you don't have any information, you don't have any understanding of the true meaning of life, what life actually is. So you waste it, that's all. You waste whatever time you've got doing silly things, which after a flash, one flash of moment, is over and done with. Where is the enjoyment that we previously had, from our material activities? It's like watching a movie. When you're watching the movie, you get so absorbed in it, you actually experience emotions, based on what you're seeing in the movie, so it becomes like a real thing to you. But after the movie's over, what are you left with? The movie itself is not real. It's just, a bunch of flashing lights on a screen, which you we construct in a certain way in our minds to be meaningful, that's all. But actually, what is it? It's just flashing lights. And even the objects that have been filmed and are then being projected on the screen, they're also not real. So when we think back different periods of our life, it's just the same as what thinking back and, you've seen a movie at some point, later on you think about that movie. So the memories that we have of so-called real life are nothing more than, the same as remembering a movie that we saw. They're no more real to us, they have no more real effect on us than a movie does. But we think, this is life, this is important, this is what I should spend all my time on. So we become absorbed in material life, and we're driven. We're driven by desire to be happy. Nobody is happy, and therefore we're always looking for it. And we'll do anything and everything to try to fulfill our, material desires. These very powerful urges that we have, for pleasure. People will do anything, as is mentioned here. It's not an exaggeration to say that somebody in love or lust, rather, is quite prepared to, kill another living being to satisfy their own senses. And it doesn't matter whether it might be their mother, their father, their guru, or anything else. If something's an obstacle to my enjoyment in the material world, get rid of it. This is the mentality. So in that way, the material life is always fraught. It's full of uncertainty, it's full of unhappiness, and the denouement is not very nice. You die. I saw a series actually called The Human Body, which was made by the BBC some years ago. It's worth watching. I recommend it to devotees because you really start to see the body as a machine there. And they trace the creation of the body from the time of sexual intercourse. They actually film, the sperm going into the egg and fertilizing it, and then they film all the different stages of the development of the eggs up to the point of birth, and then they followed the life, of this baby. And anyway, so they're filming like the progress of human life from conception to death. And for the death part of it, they actually filmed the guy dying. And this man was an atheist. So, because the whole film is propaganda for atheism, evolution, the body is everything. So this man, at the end of his life, what has he got? He's got some kind of cancer, he's dying, nobody can do anything to help him. And he's resigned to just disappearing and becoming nothing. They give him so many drugs, he's in so much pain. They give him so many drugs that he's not aware of anything. He can't communicate anymore, he's just like a vegetable on the couch. And then he dies. And that's it, really, wonderful, uplifting, end to the story. Dies in ignorance, dogged up to his eyebrows, not aware of anything around him. And then what do? They just burn the body and scatter the ashes in the garden, as if that's going to help him, grow up with the flowers or something. So the point is that the body is not everything. This is the mistake that material civilization makes, that we're educated right from the beginning. And the whole structure of society supports this idea that we are the body and that's all there is. And that your only business in life is to go out and gratify your senses as much as possible. And then ultimately it's okay to do whatever you need to do to get that gratification, even if you have to kill and slaughter other living beings, which they're doing. They've rationalized, the killing of so many animals and birds and fishes, and recently they rationalized the killing of babies within the womb before they even get a chance to get born, and just butcher them. What to speak about your own mother and father, killing their own children within the womb. Why? Because we can't afford it. We want the sex, but we don't want the result. So this way people become mad. They start to think that they can do anything and everything, that there's no supreme Lord in control. There are no laws of material nature which will bring to us, the inevitable result of our own actions. But rather, you're just free to do anything you like, and as long as it makes you happy, it's bona fide. So they're always changing the laws to increase this idea of sense gratification. And in this way, people miss the real benefit of this human form. The real value is gone. Somebody asked me one time a question in the class I gave in Detroit, that what is there of real value? So, we know as devotees, the real value is the sense of our relationship with the Supreme Lord, because that lasts. Anything that's valuable means it can't be taken away from you. If we have something that we think is of value, but we know it can be taken away, then where's the value? When that time comes, you've lost it, you don't get it back, then your value is gone. So something of real value is something which is based on the sense of ourselves as being eternal living beings and eternal parts and parcels of a supreme living being, and entering into, that bond with that supreme living being. That will not let us down. Krishna will never let us down, but he'll always support us and sustain our relationship, and that's expressed here, that who is never conquered by anyone becomes conquered by one who gives up the bodily concept of life. That's what is attracting Krishna, that this person is coming back to, reality. He's giving up the bodily concept of life, and he's trying to detach himself from that so that he can attach himself to me. So then Krishna becomes very much obliged to such a personality and gives them all the means by which they can come to him. That's his promise in the Bhagavad Gita. So in that way then, the Varnashram system is based with this, worldview, spiritual worldview, rather than a mechanistic worldview. Everything that you do is everything that we do is based on our perception of what we are and what this world is. Yeah, it's reciprocal to the information that we receive about it. So if we want to make real progress in human life, we have to understand what we really are. And then our actions will automatically follow suit. Yeah, Gyan and Vigyan. Gyan means knowledge, Vigyan means realized. So Vedic civilization, right from the very beginning, teaches everybody you're not this body. This is the whole basis of it. Then you have the ashrams, you have the varnas, everything is directed towards elevating a person, not immediately, but gradually, to the platform where they have no more identification with material nature at all. And that especially is true for the householders. Because in the position of a householder, that's where you're forming very intimate bonds, strong, sense of relationship with so many other living beings. You're building your dynasty. A man and woman get married, they have kids. Those kids grow up, they have kids. Those kids grow up, they have kids. And you're in a massive entanglement. Yeah, we all know. It's a big entanglement. It's just increasing and increasing. Therefore, the Vedic word or Sanskrit word for woman is stri, because it means that by combination with a woman, a man then expands everything that is, his connections with the material world just expand and expand and expand on the basis of this development of family life.